Rob Ramrath. I'm the CIO of Post Corporation. And I'll give the names and introduce these folks, and in a minute they'll introduce themselves. So Paul Gillen, Bill Donaldson, and Albert Schneider. And our panel this morning, I'll get into the...
Try to get them all in. Sorry.
Okay. There we go.
That's a good-looking panel. Formerly exotic male dancers. There they are.
So we'll get into the topic and the introductions in a minute. But first I thought how we might like to run the panel this morning, and I was pondering that. And I was thinking we might run it like a political debate in terms of me being the moderator. And you think of some of the characteristics of a political debate, and they tend to bias the moderator, which is good. You know, first of all, the moderator decides what the questions are. He decides really whether or not he likes the people on the panel, the panelists. And also he has an agenda, or she has an agenda, and asks questions according to emphasize that agenda, and of course to ask the hard questions to those folks he'd like to de-emphasize, or just never ask them a question at all. So actually what I won't do is I won't ask every question of every panelist. I find that gets very dry and boring, and we don't want to do that. And the other option, of course, when the candidate doesn't like the question, he just answers a different one. So the topic this morning, before we get to introductions, is innovation in IT. What does it say on the agenda? It says enhancing innovation with technology. We're actually going to depart from that a little bit in terms of really the emphasis. This morning, I don't want to spend a lot of time discussing how information technology can innovate business. I think rather what would be more interesting is how do those who provide information technology, how do IT departments and the people that make up those departments actually innovate? So I'd like to get into that in some depth. So with that, let me first ask each of the panelists, starting with Paul, just to introduce yourself.
I'm Paul Gillen. I'm an outlier on this panel because I'm not an IT person per se. I did have 20 years in IT media at Computer World and Tech Target. For the last 5 years I've been specializing in social media. I've written several books on that topic, and so I deal mainly with marketers, but I've always kept my hand in the IT business, and very interested in how IT professionals help enable the introduction of new technology.
I'm Bill Donaldson. I'm the Applications Development Head at MITRE Corporation. We enable the knowledge worker at MITRE. That's not a theme, that's our core value. And been running innovation programs there for the past 5 years. We have a 10% program that we have for that. And recently some of our innovation has gone out in the open source, so we have an Apache project that just started. So innovation does happen.
And good morning, Albert Schneider with IBM. I'm the Director of Transformation within our services business, and it's been 7 years as the CIO of IBM Research.
Okay, thank you. Paul, what is innovation?
It's creativity, it's practical creativity.
Short and sweet, okay. Bill?
For us, it's innovation with purpose. So it's not just blue sky innovation. It has to tie back to the business. It has to be put in our context of the MITRE Corporation and the customers we're serving.
I'll twist it, Albert. How do you know it when you see it?
If it is different, if it is novel, if it is adding value to your constituency, most often it has some type of innovative component.
Okay.
I think you know when you see it, when you see a value to it. You know, people in IT, and I was in IT media for many years, had thousands of press tours come around and people showing clever new products, and you look at this stuff and you say, well, that's cool, but that's not innovative because I don't know what to do with it. You know, I think it hits you in your gut. You say that has value. I know what I can do with that.
Okay. So, Bill, you are currently a practitioner. Albert, you have been a practitioner. What is the role of the IT department in innovating, either for itself, innovating in what it does, or innovating for the company? What is its role, its responsibility? Is it necessary?
So, first answer is yeah, of course it's necessary. I think Jay hit the nail on the head, right? If you're just an order taker, get out of business, go do something that adds value and have purpose. But I think IT is really about infrastructure, access to information, data, and it should be an enabler, right? So I think that you have a core business to enable the business, and nowadays it might be a DIY, right? Do it yourself type of IT. But also you need some internally facing innovation to keep the really smart people or the wicked smart people, focused, energized, and going forward, because you don't know where that's going to happen, right? You have to let it happen.
But Albert, if you work in an innovative company, you can have no shortage of ideas coming at IT that add a lot of value and are really innovative by nature. Why does the IT department itself have to worry about innovation for the business?
I think there are a couple of reasons. I mean, as Bill had mentioned, one of the focuses I have is horizontal, so it's this notion of enabler. One of which is vertical, how do we innovate, within our segment across. Why you have to worry about innovation is, innovation as I described, is novel, is of value, is a number of things. It's not all good. Sometimes innovation can be very disruptive to the enterprise. I believe in very open innovation as you're developing something, but then as you're looking to distribute something or have it consumed, I think it has to go through some type of governance process. You can have something that's innovative that will ruin half the desktops in the company, or would create something else as a side effect that is not desirable. So I think that there is, we talked about rails, the term I use is governance. I mean, I think there is a process in which you allow innovation to occur, and that you let it develop, and then how you harvest it or how you exploit it, I think is different as well.
Paul, have you ever seen any damaging innovation by an IT department?
Knowledge management, maybe was a big one.
Snap! Keep them stupid.
I think imposing a top-down that was an example. I'd say knowledge management. We tried to do for 20 years, right, to create knowledge management systems, and these were designed as top-down. They were imposed on people. Let's suck your brain and give you nothing back for it. And they failed, and they for good reason. And you see now this sort of alternative approach is beginning to bubble up from the bottom with social networks and internal social networks, what we call enterprise social networks, which is really a different approach to knowledge management, and is proving to be, I think, much more effective because people see value in contributing knowledge to the organization. I think IT organizations are really struggling with this, having failed at top down. Do we enable bottom up, knowing that that's inherently uncontrollable? But short answer to your question is, I think those big knowledge management systems.
Bill, when's the last time you damaged your company with innovation?
Good question, but I think the real answer is, we've just pulled out Oracle out of our infrastructure, importing in more open sourcing. So, answer another question, right?
This is called
obfuscation.
Process. But I think, innovation, I think, as an innovative process. I think, we've had a few attempts inside of MITRE where, they've had these innovation programs, or innovation's a big thing. And we haven't put up the guardrails. We haven't had the governance. We haven't defined the strategy. We haven't, had the processes. We haven't done that stuff. So it's sort of, false starts of these innovation programs. I think you got to be careful. It's not just the next buzzword. It's not yesterday's cloud or 2 days ago's cloud. And I think it is sort of the lifeblood of an organization. So you got to shepherd it.
Albert, do you need an innovation program within your IT department?
I think you do. I think you need a framework in which to operate. Jay said it. It's not so much the how or the specifics. It is the what. It is the framework. It is the areas that you're going to choose to innovate in. With everything, I have a operational budget, I have a transformational budget, and I actually then allocate some to innovation. And I have to have that mix. My operational budget is 75% of my business, transformation is 25% of my business. But in order to meet those two goals, I need a innovation element to that as well. And Jay said again, resonated very well with me. One of the most difficult things to do is to say no to a really good idea because there's already a few great ideas, or you need to save money for a great idea, or you can't crater your operational business because that's what runs the business, as an example. So it really is that balance. It's the discipline that you need to have in going through this.
Just a quick show of hands. How many people within their IT departments have innovation programs running? Interesting. I guess that's why these guys are on the panel.
I think once you put a label on it, you kill it. We can debate this. Innovation, I think, is a cultural phenomenon. It's not an organizational thing. It's like creating a lab for saying go and be creative in the lab. As far as I know, that doesn't work. You can't tell people to be creative. I think we model cultures that we admire.
I agree. I think it is cultural, right? I think you have to have a framework, because culture doesn't happen, right? It's the reward system, it's the air around us, it's how we do business. It's we praise Albert because he did this innovative thing, but yet and I think you need to have a framework. You got to have some small amount of process around it, or else it doesn't happen. So
and I'll bring up two companies here I think are remarkable in this respect, and that's Google and Apple, which are two companies I think most people would say are very innovative, and yet go about innovation in completely different ways. I think the iPad versus the iPod for iPhone, versus the Android are a perfect example of that. Where the iPhone is tightly controlled, is exclusively from Apple. There's no licensing rights. You have to pass a board of supervisors to get your app listed on iTunes. Apple controls everything, and it's a very innovative company. Google tries to control almost nothing. It's open source. It's share and share alike. It's open licensing. There's lots of apps out there. They don't try to control them, and yet Google is a very innovative company too. And I think these are almost exactly opposite cultures that both succeed in being innovative.
But I would suggest that they both do have a process for innovation. Maybe completely different models, but I think it is critically important that you have a framework, that you have a set of operating principles, however it would be, to yield the level of innovation that you're looking for.
Okay, I'm going to pull this back. I want to pull this back to IT. So unless the audience yells at me, what I said when we were chatting before, said I don't want to get to the 3M Post-it examples. How many people here don't know about the 3M Post-it story? Okay, I want to be a little careful about that. I want to talk about IT. Paul, Albert used the word transformation, and to me it almost sounded as he was using it synonymously with innovation. I could also go back a little bit before the word transformation was being used popularly to talk about re-engineering. Of course, we all know how passé business process re-engineering programs are. Is transformation synonymous with innovation?
No, not at all. Innovation can occur within very small segments of a business or an organization. Figuring out a new way to mix the slurry for the concrete can be innovative without being transformative.
Yeah, I don't think it's transformation. Maybe in Albert's world, transformation makes sense. So I think innovation has to be culturally relevant, right? You have to put it in your context, and if you don't have, that's why you can't copy Apple's model, because there's only one Steve Jobs, right? So I think you have to figure out what it is, and I think we were talking earlier, Rob, with you. You don't have any application developers, So having something that's innovation around application development doesn't make much sense, but process innovation may make sense. So I think you got to look at what is your innovation. And I think that's the governance and the framework put around that.
And I don't think that innovation is synonymous with transformation either.
I just was saying that.
I do think, however, that it can be, transformation can benefit from innovation. Very mundane operational activities, I think arguably could benefit even more from innovation.
Let's talk about that a little bit. We were talking earlier this morning about how IT departments that might be best in class might be 65% making the donuts and turning the crank and 35% providing new value. That new value may or may not be innovative. It may or may not be innovations driven from the IT department, rather order taking of innovative ideas. And we discussed how, well, you know what, there can be innovations in making the donuts too. Albert, you come up with some examples in your past or present about IT departments getting really innovative in terms of production support, operations, the running of IT itself.
So there are a couple areas. One would be just operational efficiency within the data center. So it could be things as simple as automation, which often has some type of innovative capacity, or security. One of the things that we're looking at now is a lot of trend analysis. So, an innovative approach to, look at your help desk tickets to see how you can be more proactive maybe in a particular area. Those types of, I think, approaches are innovative, of varying degrees.
Paul, you're an expert in social networking. Have you seen two books and on a working on a third?
One never calls oneself an expert, but when other people do it, it's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll rephrase it. You write books on social networking. Have you observed the application of social networking to help an IT department be innovative?
No. Quite simply, I can't think of a single case study in which that has been the case. What I see with IT departments is that they're supremely conflicted about the whole social networking thing. And I have had some conversations with CIOs about this, and they are, and maybe this is a microcosm of the whole innovation issue, is that they see that this is a phenomenon that that is spread like wildfire with the people in their company. People are inventing new uses for these social networks. IT wants to get out front of this. IT wants to be part of this. They want to enable it. But they're terrified because they worry about security, they worry about accountability, they worry about productivity drain, and so they're in this purgatory now, where they're blocking all of these tools that people want to use in the organization, and yet they inherently feel like they want to enable this. They want they want this to happen, but they're scared to let it happen because it conflicts with their basic instincts to be control and security and productivity focused.
So this is a very interesting point. Bill, how do you see IT departments as obstacles or obstruction to innovation for a company?
Well, they're the group that says no, right? That's the first job they do, is say no. So they become obstacles. They'll throw up security, regulations, all sorts of privacy things, availability, you can't take my systems down. And I think those are just, what IT does. And I think the problem with IT has to turn around and say, how can we enable those things and look at techniques or technologies to allow people to innovate.
I just want to build on that because I do talk to a lot of marketers, and when you mention IT to corporate marketers, their eyes kind of roll and they shake their heads. And the IT group is the naysayers. They're the ones who won't let things happen. And this is maybe a PR problem because there are very good reasons why IT organizations do that. But seems to be just increasing the chasm between IT organizations and their users as users become more empowered with technologies that they can use themselves.
Let's do a quick poll for the room here, whether or not it's your decision, but just your company. How many of your companies block access to certain websites?
Certain websites?
Certain
Of any type?
Yeah.
Certain websites.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay. So actually, there's very few people in the audience. How many people in the room block?
Actually, you need to qualify access to the porno sites are usually.
Right,
Right, I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
there's,
Oh, I'm talking any website. How many people's companies block access to any website?
Yes.
Okay, it's still a small number. How many people's companies block protocols in terms of content filtering? Okay, that's very few. So we don't have a lot.
Or social media?
How many? Well, that's
Yeah.
ultimately
Right.
blocking website. How many people's companies block social media activity?
Okay.
Very few. This is an innovation lab, so
Hey, Rob, I'd like to follow on that though, but here, I think I can go anywhere I want to at Olin, but you might say that that would be a career limiting move. But I could.
so how many people actively monitor or report out the activities of their employees? So again, very few. That could be.
Or they're lying to you.
yeah, I'm not sure there's a representative group.
That
I mean,
is-
there are those-
She makes a very interesting point, because even if you don't actively monitor it, knowing that something is logged, okay, the accountability aspect of behavior does limit people's behavior. And, I mean, we don't use it unless there's a reason to look into it, but just knowing that does change people's behavior.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jared, Mr. Bentham from we're watching.
Well, one of the things is with Google Alerts and all the other alerts around specific topics, I mean, most of the senior administration, Olin has more Google alerts set than I don't know what, so anytime Olin comes up anywhere,
Sure.
it's being flagged, so it goes to that accountability piece, right? So as long as things are being tracked, if someone's doing something on a blog or wiki or any place like that, or Facebook, we're all getting all these messages every time it's indexed, so from that perspective, everybody knows what's going on and monitors it on a regular basis, but not in a strict monitoring application, more of awareness.
Yeah, the analogy we use is the London Tube system. If you've ever been in London Tubes, there are cameras every place. And there are very few obstacles to doing anything. But you know that if you do, someone's going to figure it out. And it's a very different way of, I wouldn't say imposing control, we call it freedom with responsibility.
Yet the reason people don't object, the reason the British don't object to that situation is that they assume nobody's watching. Right? But somebody could watch if it was necessary.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I do subscribe to a little bit of that. I mean, for instance, people who work for me, I run our, IBM globally, our email system and our instant messaging as an example. People who work for me can look at anyone's email, look at anyone's saved instant message. They don't by policy. And I will occasionally even get a call from a senior vice president that says, I sent this email, go take it away. And I'm like, we don't do that. Every so often the chairman will say you do, but in most cases, we don't do that. But I mean, I think there is something to say that, somebody could,
Yeah.
and that in of itself is, sufficient deterrent.
But it may be too late. The genie's out of the bottle. If someone opens a virus or they give up corporate secrets, say it's when, like in the example of the London Tubes, 7/11, there was a terrorist attack.
Yep.
Cameras didn't stop that because there was no preventive way of stopping it. So I would say, how do you balance prevention versus openness?
Malware versus privacy are two different things.
Yeah.
I mean, there certainly are things, and we'll talk about it in the next panel about looking at things that are malicious to the institution and filtering those out. But beyond that, it's very much laissez-faire. I work at a university.
But back to, and I want to maybe disagree a little bit. I mean, within IT, we actually do use different forms of social media. I think it is, very good, healthy, complementary to what we do. So, for instance, we will have, whether it's an internal blog or wiki or, could even be pointing to something externally, but typically internally, that we might tag to supplement a help desk question, as an example. So we will have a growing base of employees that are viewed as experts in the area, may or may not be in the IT environment. Now, IT will enable that to allow it to be tagged to the help desk application or, knowledge repository or things of that nature, or even how you interact with the agents, whether it's through instant messaging, not just a call, there's all types of things that I think begin to touch on the social media aspect of it.
I think the social networking inside the company helps IT, and we've deployed some applications and have some social aspects to them. And what we find is IT no longer has to respond, right? You get people out there responding to other people, oh, that's a problem, they're already working on it, or here's how you do it. So you do see some of that self-help in the inside if you enable it, right? So that's an area of IT enabling innovation, and it's not like, wow, big innovation. I think she's got a question. Jay.
So I think the only way you can enforce things that are important is to let most stuff that isn't important go by, right? I kind of think of it the way I think of parenting children, right? Try to find a way to say yes, not a reason to say no. Because the fact is, you can't control it. You can't control it. You can think you can control it, and you can want to control it, and you can, right? You can't control it, right? So what is it that you're actually trying to control? So we block access to pornography. We block access to things that can get the company in trouble, right? But blocking Facebook for a company like ours, with the employee base that we have, is not only not possible, it's not logical, right? Because that's how you get painted as just a bunch of policemen who aren't trying to help, right? But if you can help 8 times out of 10, then the 2 times where you can't, they'll listen and they'll understand that, okay, I don't get what I want every time I want it, but at least they're trying as best they can to help me do what I'm trying to do. And I think that's the balance. For a long time, I got hung up on, you don't need that to do your job, right? You don't need Facebook to do your job. If you work in accounts payable and you're processing vouchers, you do not need Facebook, and I challenge you to tell me that you do, right? But at the end of the day, why do I care, right? I mean, why do I really care? If you're getting the vouchers out, right, do I really care? And is it worth what I have to invest to follow it up and all the credibility problems and all the overhead and all the crapola, right? We have the right to interrogate anybody. We have the same thing as you guys have. We have the right to interrogate everybody's email. There's a policy that you sign when you join the company that says that email is ours. It's not yours. We can interrogate it when we want. We can take it away. We can publish it. We can do whatever we want. We never do, unless there's something brought to us that says there's been a harassment thing, or we think there's a leak, or somebody, right? Everybody understands that, right? But I think that IT shops for a long time get back into this corner of thinking that they're the guardian of the enterprise, right? And at the end of the day, I'm only the guardian of certain things. I cannot let government documents get exposed, right?
And you are the guardian of the enterprise to a certain degree, but I think where it crosses over is when you say your comment about you don't need that to do your job. Well,
Right.
who the hell are you to say that, right?
Right.
And when IT is in a role, there was a Robert Half survey about a year ago that got quite a lot of publicity that found that over half of American corporations were blocking social sites. I don't think that's the case anymore, but this was a year ago. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that a lot of them were blocking it because of productivity reasons. Who the hell are they to make that judgment? And you're going to get out in front of these technologies and enable them, and enable this, this trend of consumerization you've all heard about, all these iPads in the room as an example. You can't be making judgments about what people need to do that work.
And I also think that there's a blurry line now between work and social, right? So people who are half my age, right, they're on their iPhone, and by the way, why do I insist that you have BlackBerry, right? If iPhone works for you and it's all the same. But I'll tell you what, for every time that they're surfing during the day, right, if I send an email at 10:30 at night, more often than not, I get a response because he or she's carrying that thing around. So where does the productivity line get drawn, right? I don't think it's the same as it was when I was half my age, right, where the work was done in the office, right? So I just think, loose Confederation, control at the enterprise, and let people do in the sandbox is the only way you're going to be credible.
Right, I agree, and it's the higher level, measures. It's, are you getting your job done, your productivity, are you damaging to the, I mean, you have to govern at a much higher level, and then what happens in between, I mean, you do need to have that flexibility in there. I mean, that's what allows creativity, that's what allows productivity, that's what allows, I mean, so many positive things.
I think it comes down to one word, and I think IT needs to be more generous. I think, being...
Well, I'm not sure that's the word
So I think so it's generous, and this is something we're trying to do and look at it and say, rather than say no first, right? Say like Jay said, rather than question, why do you really need that? Why do you need access? Allow it to happen, and then what you do is you put up the guardrails. So you don't want to tell people how, right? The sort of the agile methodology, stop from telling people how. And even from a what perspective, right? Dial down even on what. And put up the guardrails and say, these are the areas you can't go into. And then the rest is, you ask, why would we want to spend money on this, right? Ask the 5 whys on why would we do this. But other than that, just stay out of the way, right? Be more generous. Allow them to go do what they want.
And focus on the why in terms of guardrails.
Right,
too.
exactly.
Have people understand the consequence of their actions so that they can make an independent decision in a new context without having to constantly rewrite the rules all the time.
Right, and it really, aside from it becomes, unaffordable to do it, or just, you're right, almost impossible to do it. I mean, I raised my hand, do we block sites? So, back in 1996, IBM had the dubious honor, when everyone's getting on the internet, is that the IBM.com domain was the #1 site that visited Playboy.com. True story, right? So, that's never going to happen again. So we blocked Playboy.com, Playgirl.com in '96, right? And that's been in place since. But I'm not going to go chase all these other things to try and keep up. I mean, no, we have a policy for that. If you're caught doing this, or with pornography or whatever it is, then we fire you or whatever. That's the policy. I am not going to try and chase all these other sites out there.
Shifting gears just a bit. Ask a question to the audience, specifically Jay. Do you have an advanced development function in your company?
We do.
Do you have an advanced development function in IT?
We do not.
So advanced development functions, they're typically inside of any product company. It sort of sits in between product engineering and pure research and development. And it's to get early ideas going. It's to get things germinated. It's to give people the time to be able to develop product ideas and so forth, being out of the fray of actually getting a product to market. Should IT departments all think about having an advanced development function?
I can't answer that.
No?
We just reorganized and took our advanced IT development group out.
Oh, tell me why. What's the history?
So probably 10 plus years ago, they reorganized. They created this advanced development group that was a smaller version of a much larger advanced development group, and because it wasn't delivering, and it wasn't, it was too big and not focused. And what we found was the smaller group was not focused and not delivering things back to the enterprise. It wasn't tied to the rest of the organization. So there's this huge impedance mismatch. For those that are electrical engineers, get this. What the advanced development group created these ideas, and they were prototypes, they were pilots, they were research pilots, they were research projects. They put 1,000 different labels on them, but in the end, they could never get sucked back into the organization. They were sort of this foreign body, and the bodies, rightly, were saying, no, we can't support this because, we have to, send the bills out. We have to do the day job, and creating all these one-off things just, doubles my effort. I could, if you built it like this, I could have sucked it in. So that's why we killed it off.
So I think the answer is yes. So we have something called Technology Adoption Program, or TAP. And then we have a TAP to Production program. How do you take these things that are allowed to be very creative, innovative, fenced off from production, So again, they're not affecting the operations. And then the things that, are of value there, how can we then bring those into production? And I do think that that's important.
How do you avoid a culture of haves and have-nots, where the people outside of the industry, they're making the donuts, they're killing themselves every day, they're down in the engine room, where the people in AD get to work on whatever they want to work on, there's glory, etc. How do you manage that? How do you manage all the things that Bill said went wrong?
So it is run by the IT organization, but actually it is targeted for the non-IT people. So we will give you free amount of space to go do things. I mean, if you're a production application owner, it costs X amount per month for this, for that, etc. In this environment, you can go get whatever you want. We have some policies. If you haven't used it in 90 days, we do this, whatever, so we can turn it over and reuse it. But anybody can go do it. Anybody can do basically anything they want in there.
I think a lot of this comes back to, do you have a culture that rewards risk-taking and that doesn't penalize people for mistakes? And I think it's particularly true of East Coast companies. We are still bound in a culture where it's okay to innovate as long as you don't do it wrong. And you look at the fundamental difference with some of these more innovative companies we think of, particularly some of the West Coast technology companies, where failure is considered almost a badge of honor. I want to propose one scenario. It's a real-life scenario I ran into last year. I was working with a guy who worked for a big healthcare provider, and he wanted to start a community for elderly, a health-related community for elderly, and his company would not support it, would not give him any resources to do it. So he did it himself. He did it with a WordPress blog, and he branded it with the company name. That was probably the mistake that he made. He succeeded in building a fairly large and active community of visitors to this blog who were participating, and he was doing something that should have benefited, that would have benefited the company. The company found out he was doing it, they shut it down. Took it down. IT organization came in. You cannot do that. Took it down. Was that the right thing to do?
Was it, Albert?
Probably yes. But again, that's where I don't know what governance was in place to begin with to allow some of that. Now, again, it was a undesired consequence all around. I think there was value to be had by all, but how it was gone about, I probably would have taken the same action.
Bill, so an advanced development function didn't work at MITRE. That was the example. That was a MITRE example. Surely you still encourage and want innovation. So what have you done as a surrogate to that?
A couple of things. One is we have kind of the more focused innovation. So we have IT has a pot of money. I send out ideas on these are the thematic areas that we want innovation on, and they open it up to an idea market so people can go out there and compete for the money and get down selected. So that's sort of the, I call it more traditional innovation programs. Something that we're doing is kind of like what Albert talked about, opening it up. So what we're doing is enabling people to develop things. So we're using some if you've seen iGoogle, Open Social. So people can go ahead and write their own technology solution, and we'll put it onto our intranet. Effectively zero barrier. So you can go ahead and create it and put it on everybody's homepage. Other type of enabling technologies to bring other systems into the system, into the infrastructure. And it's kind of, we don't care what technology it is. It's really based on an API and open standards so that we just can bring it in, and we don't have to support it. If Albert wants to go ahead and write this application, we go ahead and give it to him and say, go ahead, go off and do these things, but you support it.
Do you like the famous 3M stories, do you have budget and time that are allocated in people's departments and in their work stream to be able to encourage it?
Yeah, I think, so we do. We have a pot of money in IT. In my organization, I have flexibility enough so I have 10% time allocated. And what we do is make sure that it's transparent. So whatever people spend their time on, it's tracked. And then whatever they do is just a simple story card they put up there, and that's sort of visible to the rest of the organization what they're working on.
Now, if I go seek out one of those system admins down in the engine room and ask her or him, do you really have 10% of your time to work on innovation? What are they going to say?
So for my organization, yes. The sysadmins, no, because they're a different, I don't run them. But we do see the corporate money, or having the problem of not necessarily, I call it good project portfolio management. The money comes in, and you still have your day job. So I think that's a problem of when it's funded outside and it's funded at a fraction of a staff. How do you put that into the work program where they still have to deliver that X fraction back to the business that they're counting on? And I think that's a challenge. I'm waiting to see how that folds out.
Albert, what's the challenge with just everybody innovate?
Well, again, a couple things. I mean, you have a core business. You have to make your numbers if you're IBM or any big company quarterly, right? I mean, even annually is no good anymore. I mean, quarterly, I got to hit that mark every single time. So the challenge is you can't spend too much time on the next big thing unless you're executing on all the other things under it. That's why you need to segment the portion of your monies for that. I mean, I always equate things to my own personal life or personal business. I mean, you have your dalliances, whatever they are. Maybe it's electronics, maybe it's cars, maybe it's this, but again, you still have to pay the bills, you have to do everything else, etc. And so that really is the balance. So we charge specific groups with innovation. We tell others you're free to innovate, but you still have to be 95% utilized from your billable. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to meet your SLAs, all those other things. You want to innovate on top of that? God bless you, we'd like to do it. We'll even help you in doing it.
So that sounds like you're making the donuts all the time. You don't have any time for anything else, but go ahead and innovate.
Well, what you will find is that people will always find time to do the things they have a passion over. I tease my kid sister. Never seems to have enough money, but tell you, there's a Grateful Dead concert. She's going to that goddamn thing. She just has to do that. You always seem to find the time and the money to do the things that are important to you. Some people just like it. They have a passion. They have a knack to do it. We have little reward programs too. We have two other programs, one called Think Place, and the other is a development one called Liquid. But in Think Place, you have the ability, certain level executives to issue a design challenge or a Think Place challenge. You have people internally compete. And so I will offer up my idea. You'll have your peers who will look at that, will vote on it. I like that idea better than that idea. And then within a balance, I think it's $25,000 or whatever it is. If you save the company money, I'll give you 25% of the first year savings. So there's things like that. Now again, if you're not doing your job, I'm still going to fire you. Even though you're a great innovator, because you're an accountant and this is what I need you to do. But, if you can do all of that and want to do this as well, go ahead.
Okay.
That's a really interesting model. There's a company right up here in Waltham called Assented that is sort of packaging this, productizing this, where businesses like 3M will submit questions that they can't, problems that they can't solve. They'll submit it to a crowdsourced approach. I think they've got about 300,000 experts registered in their network, and it's working. They're solving problems through exactly the type of challenge and solution approach that Albert described.
Well, we were talking about how IT might constrain innovation in a company. Let's talk a little bit about information security, how it might constrain innovation, because I'm sure you run into that a lot. And let's not talk about information security as a thing. Let's talk about information security as a department, as the people responsible for it. How have you seen them constrain innovation at a company, either within IT or the company itself more broadly? And when you see that, what are your thoughts around how to improve on that?
Well, they are the major constraining factor of external innovation, certainly in most companies. for a very good reason.
Dennis is writing stuff.
Major constraining factors.
Over here.
They are the sphincter of innovation.
Nice. Let's go. Now we go. Oh, all right. Back down.
But for a very good reason. So I think I think that information security is the group that, I mean, if that's their job, is to prepare for the worst case scenario, it's hard to argue with them preventing preventing people from doing things that could get them in trouble. I can't, I mean, that's their job. How could they do it better?
Will not build world-class three-sided moat. Imagine the picture, 3 sides around the castle, and the enemy comes in through the back door. I think I see not only our company, but other companies, you have the information security folks, and they build world-class barriers when they're presented in front of them. And they don't look around to see that they've got this wall that no one can scale, but just walk around. And I think that, looking at the holistic view is probably one thing that information security folks would really benefit from. And the other is, just being aware of common events. I remember a few years ago talking to some information security people, and when the Apple wireless device came out, and they said, really? You can buy one of these for $100 and plug in the network and it does transparent bridging and I can get everybody on the network? Really? Oh my God. So I mean, you just see them sort of not aware of what's around them. I think they got to take the blinders off.
I think certain organizations do have roles. I mean, legal has a specific role, HR has a role, IT has a role as it relates to data and other things. I was telling a story at dinner last night. I came from corporate within IBM, and second month as the research CIO, I have this researcher who puts their system on the network, every 2 months or so, but it has a virus on it. Affects the whole doggone network. We pinpoint it to the guy, won't let us update it, put antivirus on it, call his manager, call security. I go to the guy's office, I said, you get 2 choices. You're going to hand that laptop to my IT guy, or you're going to hand that laptop to the security guy and we're taking it away. And he handed it to the IT guy, and we did it, and that was, one of the battles that I picked as an example. But in general, what I tried to do then is create zones. So we had a whole lab that had a firewall on it. You can go in there. I could care less how many viruses are on those systems. I know you turn them over every day, every week, etc. So, we created an environment where you can do the things you're going to do without infecting the general network, which had people who could care less about what you were doing and had operational jobs and other things they needed to do. And so we figured out a way to say yes, but occasionally you have to draw that line in the sand. But seldom. I mean, you need people to give them room to innovate.
Okay, I've got one more question I'm going to ask all 3 of you in this case before we turn over to just general questions and pass the mic. So I'll start with Bill. What is the most innovative delivery that you've been involved in coming from IT to the business? And if you don't have one you've been involved in, one you've observed.
I guess the one that we're currently doing, talk about our intranet, and allowing anyone to create an application and get it put out on the internet. It's really democratizing IT in the enterprise, and people are reacting very positively to it. So I think that is, if not the best one, it's the most recent one.
Oh.
There's 2 to come to mind now. One is what the CIA is doing. I was not personally involved with this, but what the CIA was doing very early on with sort of a massive wiki to consolidate their intelligence information. And I think they got out front of that and done that very well, as have a number of government organizations. I guess another one, also in the government realm, would be the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, which has embraced a variety of externally facing social vehicles, including Facebook, Flickr, Twitter, and other some other of these technologies, to communicate more openly with people about what's going on in transportation in this state. You know, one of the problems people have, they pass a bridge that's been under construction for 6 months, and you stop every morning for 20 minutes trying to get past this construction, saying, what the hell is happening here? Well, they're showing photos. They're posting photos constantly updated of the progress of projects, and I think that was a great public relations move. And it was something that the IT organization, I know from speaking with these people, the IT organization enabled.
And
Those were hired models.
I mean, for me, I mentioned it before, it's probably this technology adoption program. So it's really this environment that, you know, surrounds you with a collection of tools and aids and allows you to, you know, to do simple reuse and mash up and things that, you know, we've seen that go directly into products, things that help us with internal automation efficiency. So many different things that happen just by allowing people to go in and find a place to, you know, more easily try new things or create new things.
Okay. General questions?
I have one, if I may.
Sure.
I don't have one.
Well, the recording.
The question is, assuming that there is a room for innovation in the IT business, and it's being an infrastructure activity, do you really need really smart people in order to do innovation in IT? If yes, how do you hire those people? If not, why not?
So the answer is yes. Like all companies, we try to hire smart people, but we actually do hire smart people. We have, I mean, for us in IT, and you have to make it interesting and relevant for them. And you know, you can't have really smart people that are just turning the machinery. So you do have to segment where you put certain people and hire for the right skill set. By opening source some things, we allow and attract people that are really interested in that, right? These are internet class developers. These are not your garden variety back office people. So I think that if you really want to do the enabling piece, you have to focus the really smart people in those areas. So I think you've got to look at it and make the really smart people. And if you have product managers, you have to make sure they're really, really smart product managers and know what the end user wants, and they're very empathetic and they can sit there. So I think you do have to hire really smart people.
So I guess I'll say no. Do really, really smart people help all the time, right? Just about all the time. But I think you can help the average employee by, again, a process, a framework in which they can do it, tools, places where they can look at what other people have done, where other people have failed. One of the things came up, I don't know if Jay had mentioned it or maybe Ashwin last night, we actually not only capture the successes with innovation, we actually track all of the failures and we log those somewhere, because what failed for this purpose might be a success for that purpose. And often, you know, you can reuse some of those things. So, I mean, it's sort of yes. You always are better served with really smart people, but you don't have to have them to innovate, you know, throughout the organization.
If I could, the theme, really smart, wicked smart, totally smart, not regular smart, I mean, but beyond, you know, ultra smart, I mean, it's sort of like permeated our conversations, right? And I think we can all agree at a level of abstraction that it's good to have smart people just can't help themselves, they innovate. Now I want to go into that managing the smart people. I mean, do you actually have smart maps? I mean, where you actually, how do you measure smart in your company? Because the interesting thing is, okay, we got some, because when you go in, I mean, Ashwin's got this thing, he's going to do his first 9-month thing because he's new at Edwards Sign, you know, and he knows organically that some of them get it and some of them don't, right? I mean, where do you write that down? Versus the at expectations, if you will, like that type of thing. And do you exfoliate non-smart?
Yes. So we're very much a value-based group. So we articulate what smart means by values. So we talk about passion. We describe the behaviors around passion. And I think somebody mentioned before. It's somebody that thinks about software when they're not here, right? They are devoted to improving their crafts, right? It's the craftsman of old. So we do have a set of values that we do, and that's how we measure people on where they are. And we interview them and make sure they answer the technical things, but it's beyond the technical aspect.
But no, I mean, is it like it's interesting, like at the United States Military Academy at West Point, right? You know where you are in the class rank, all right? You know, and at Toyota Motor, I mean, basically Barbara Cooper, basically her direct reports. Actually, they define this is what excellence is, and this is where you stand in this type of thing. And oh, excuse me, Skippy, you're like it doesn't look good. All right, you know, I mean, do we get to that point where we actually, I mean, because we really do have to make the tough executive choices, like, because some people, they may have been smart, you know, during, you know, the BBN days, they may have been smart with this technology, but the world has changed, right? And like, how do we actually put people on the smart bubble and say, we're voting you off to like cognitive island because you don't have the CPUs to play anymore?
I mean, so at IBM we do, you know, first of all, I don't know that we have a lot of stupid people, you know, so again, you know, everybody's smart.
But that's the inverse. I mean, we do have to step up to it, right?
But we do have different benchmarks. You know, if you're in research, you know, how many patents do you have? How many papers do you have published? Are you a master inventor? Then we have levels of distinction. A senior technical staff member, a distinguished engineer, an IBM fellow, you know, which are compilations of achievements. So there are some of that, and depending on what you achieve, you actually get more freedom. You're an IBM fellow, we give you a bunch of money, we give you a few years, go do whatever you want. You know, so there is some of that in there.
But you do need to manage the people that are really good in not that long ago, but when something changes, you have to have that conversation. And it's really hard to have that conversation with a person that really loves the company, did well, but no longer fits.
But exactly, because we're in this environment where, like, it used to be, as long as you weren't breaking any laws, you could still probably add some value in some of these enterprises. We are now in this environment where, like, everybody has to be smart. And, like, you really can't, I mean, we do not have the margins in our business to sort of carry people who just are kind of, like, non-toxic, right? I mean...
Yeah,
I mean, there's always the you know, GE, you know, bottom 10% every
Speaking
year.
of non-toxic,
I mean, you always get some of that, and you know, to IBM, we do that, you know, to some degree, not to that extent, but I mean, I think you do need to go through and do that.
I really do think. I mean, because there are places in IBM when you just walk in and you say, "Wow, smart," right? And then there are other places in IBM that say, "Not so smart." I mean, this with great love, of course.
So we need to exfoliate the non-toxic.
How do you measure innovation that your company's in? Do you then trace what role technology may have played in it? For example, at IBM, you have a record number of patents each year. Do you go back and say, gee, was there something about the technology environment that enabled this group to be as productive, and likewise at MITRE and other places?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a number of internal measures. I mean, we've often talked about, I think it's, you know, 18th year in a row with patents, and there's a lot of debate internally. Do we really care if we're doing it for a 19th year, 20th year leader, et cetera? In general, people would tell you no. There's certainly a sentiment that still wants to be up top. It really has to do with the value that they yield. And we even reinforce that internally. The top, you know, 5% of the patent portfolio, I had a number of people work for me, and they would get supplemental monies each year, sometimes very significant. This one guy worked for me, was making more than me because he was getting $40,000, $50,000 a year just in supplemental patent, you know, monies that we would get. So, but there are measures on, you know, what are the things that you did put into the product. You know, and it's always a balance. I don't want to go down the, you know, the Microsoft Word or whatever. We're just cramming so many new features in, and who only uses 10% or whatever it is. It really has to be some type of balance as you're going through and looking at that. But we do have some benchmarks, you know, in terms of trying to assess the value of innovation.
Okay, one more question.
To what degree do you try to influence innovation with external factors, such as outsourcing?
Can you say more about outsourcing? I mean, what do you mean by outsourcing? I mean,
Or external factors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may have been one example.
Internal factors with outsourced influences.
I think Jay was saying something about focusing on what you do well and not focusing on the rest. It seems like outsourcing presents more and more opportunities now to just focus on what we do well.
Yeah, I would agree. It really allowed, that's the whole model. It lets you focus on your core, right? Whether it's me outsourcing the cutting of my lawn, or, whether it's somebody with their IT shop or whatever it is, what do you do well, what's worth your time, how efficient are you going to be, etc. But we do a lot of partnerships, when you talk about innovation. Innovation is not cheap. To make investments in some areas, sometimes is very significant. So more and more, I think you're seeing, partnering, and I would say in general, you don't have as many companies that, do it all themselves. Everyone is looking for some type of, partner to work with, those different things.
Yeah, I think what IT or the internal offers, you understand your business, you understand your customers, you understand the market forces. So I think that, as I said, take the things that are commodities, outsource them. Things that you can, already out there, and partner, right? I mean, somebody has probably already done some of these things, as Jay talked about, just not in your domain. So knowing what that network is in that space, and then be able to find those strategic partners that align with you, I think that's really, that brokering and that social networking and all those things, that's where the value comes in.
This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but if you go to a website when you get a chance called Fiverr.com, F-I-V-E-R. It is a place where people post what they will do for $5. And there's hundreds of thousands.
I thought it was fiber.
Fiverr. And what's amazing is how much they'll do for $5.
All right.
You might want to block that.
Involve webcams? I mean, what are we talking about?
Talking about writing, programming, data entry.
Okay, we'll end right on time. I'd like to thank our august group.